Do your students struggle with writing a summary? Summarizing is actually quite difficult when you're first learning how. It seems so simple to us on the other side with all the knowledge, doesn't it? Even though it's tricky, stick with it. This comprehension strategy is an important one for your students' long-term learning success. And as I'm sure you already know, comprehension strategies don't stand alone. This one pairs well with determining importance. In case you haven't guessed, today I have tips to help you with teaching the comprehension strategy of summarizing simply and effectively. I'm Lisa Burns, a teacher success coach, veteran elementary teacher, and mom of 5, and this is the Teach Joyfully podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Are you missing out? Team H.O.P.E insiders get extra encouragement, tips and tricks, surprise freebies, and more. All right, let's get started with just defining what summarizing actually is. Summarizing is a restating of a text in your own words, which gives the meaning of the original text in a condensed form. In fiction, that would include the beginning, the middle, and the end. Also, students would need to make sure they include the main character, the setting, the problem, and the solution. In nonfiction, summarizing would need to include the essential or main ideas and supporting details, which also includes any keywords. Summarizing is definitely a shortened form. And while I know that summary and retell are often used as interchangeable terms, they aren't really. A true retell, is different than a summary. Even though at the younger levels, kindergarten, first, and second grade, quite often we say a retell as opposed to a summary. If we mean a shortened form, then we really mean a summary. It's not a retelling. A retelling is giving really all the details of a story all the way through and telling the story in sequence from beginning to end. Whereas summarizing is definitely much more condensed than that. We boil it down to what's most essential. Something that your students need to remember when summarizing nonfiction is that we don't add any of our thoughts to this or bring our background knowledge to the table. It's written in third person. It's not meant to be what we think. It's all about the text. So let's start with 4 benefits for your students if they can summarize well. Summarizing gives students a sense of the order of events, the beginning, the middle, and the end. In fiction, summarizing gives students a sense of the order of events, beginning, middle, and end. In nonfiction, summarizing also helps students sort through information to the most important bits, not all the full details, just the most important pieces. So through summarizing, students also learn to determine the importance of information. Students who summarize well synthesize the information. It solidifies their learning as they summarize. It's a great study skill for all students, which means that it's helpful when students are learning in all content areas, especially with textbooks and research that can be dry and hard to remember and hard to synthesize. So this really is a long-term skill. It can help you in business. It can help you in college. It helps in high school. It's something that students will use over and over and over again, and it's a great learning tool. So how do we begin with summarizing? Well, the way I like to begin teaching summarizing might surprise you. I like to start with wordless books. Here's why. There's a storyline without exact words, so students don't have to fight the urge to copy and pull out exact quotes. Summarizing isn't about quotes. It's about putting things into your own words. So students learn to use their own words from the very beginning when they're learning this skill. In addition, wordless books are loaded in information because the pictures have to tell the story. So it's perfect for practice on what to use and what to leave out because there's so much information. So we have to be able to sort through. Wordless books are my favorite way to start with summarizing. I'll list a couple of my favorite wordless books to get you started in the show notes. All right, from there, I like to move to picture books. Now, as you know, I use picture books for everything, so this is not a shock that I would move to picture books, just regular picture books. So you're moving from wordless picture books to worded picture books. The beauty of this is it's a nice transition. You're going from these beautiful wordless books that have tons of information in the pictures to beautiful picture books that actually have words as well. This new skill of sorting through the author's words to create your own is the next logical step. It gives students more information to sort through. Not only do they have the pictures, but now they have the words, so they really have to use those skills of deciding what's most important. So students have to start relying on what they learned with wordless books in determining the importance of different things with words and pictures now too. Now, don't freak out because you've set your students up for success because you've already used wordless books and they've had to use their own words. And so now when you add in the picture books that do have words, it's a little bit easier for them to put things in their own words because they practiced using their own words already. You just need to remind them of that, but you do have to practice. How do we put this into our own words? What do we know so far? Okay, from there, you can go to chapter books. And yes, you can do this even with kindergarten and first graders because you can do chapter books as a read aloud. So when you do chapter books, this piece sets students up for longer term learning. Recording your thoughts in the form of a summary after a chapter is a great study skill. So students can learn this habit now, and it sets that habit up for students long term. With primary grade students, this is something you can do as a class. You don't necessarily have to have them summarizing all the time on their own. You can practice as a class, and then you can go back and forth. Do some as a class, do some on their own. And even young children can do this, even if they just do it in pictures. Don't worry, I have some examples of activities that you can do to get you started. Now, as always, in each one of these steps, whether you're using wordless books, picture books with words, or chapter books, you'll need to be modeling, you'll need to be practicing as a class and creating summaries as a class, and then moving more towards independent work. That's a given, and I know you already know that, but it bears saying just because sometimes we lose our way. Now, it's also great to give students examples. Try giving students several examples of summaries of a text that after you've read it. Let them pick the best one and tell why. Make sure that you give them some bad examples, better examples, and best examples. I like to start with 2 examples, a bad example and a best example, for students to go through and really be able to separate them. And then you can work up to 3 different examples with a better and a best included. This is a great way for students to be able to practice. If you have students at lots of different reading levels, you can read them the summaries and they can sort through them and rank them by just listening to them. Or you can do them in small groups, have a reader in the group, and then the group can rank them together. Now, we read both fiction and nonfiction with our students, and I really highly encourage that you do plenty of both. Don't go just one way or the other. I think sometimes we tend to go to a lot of nonfiction, always trying to incorporate science and social studies, which is great, but students need to hear fiction too. They need both. There's different skills and different thinking involved with each type of reading, and so we need both and a good dose of both pretty much equally. Now with nonfiction, there's a few things that students need to remember when writing a summary. Their summary should be written in the third person. We're not including opinions. We want main ideas, and then we want the supporting details. And this is where students really need to sort through what's most important, maybe what's not as important, what's unnecessary, and what's irrelevant is really important. And these are hard things to do. So lots and lots of practice of being able to rank different details before they start writing their summary is a must. For second grade and up, I love to work on a text together with a highlighter, and I can highlight all of the different things in different colors so we can say, well, this one is most important, and talk about why it's most important. How does it relate to the main idea versus the things that are unnecessary or irrelevant, and helping students sort through that. So you need lots of practice of that before you can have them start writing a summary. If they can't sort through the information, their summaries are going to be a disaster. With fiction, sometimes we can confuse the difference between a retell and a summary. A true retell is all of the events in time order words throughout the whole story. You're retelling the whole story versus summarizing, we just want the most important events and the story elements. So we're really boiling it down and keeping it much shorter. It's a snapshot. So students will need to tell about the beginning, main characters, setting, and problem, the middle, the main events, the end with the resolution of the problem. Sometimes we also want students to put in there, how does the main character change, or things like that. So if there's other things that you're wanting out of their summary, make sure that you specify and train students on how to find that. Okay, so let's talk about what this looks like with a wordless book. First, you're going to talk about the title and the cover, right? You're giving them that background information, you're thinking ahead, you're kind of making predictions. Then you can discuss how to read a wordless book, because not all students really know. They just kind of randomly flip through pictures. Okay, that was nice, and they're done. There's so much more to reading a wordless book. So training students on how to read that wordless book and going through it together is really important. Then I begin telling the story, and I have students help me tell the story. We mine the pictures for information, and then we begin talking about what is happening on each page. We pull out who the main character is. We start to realize where the setting is. We start figuring out what the problem is as we're telling the story in our own words. So as we're reading the wordless book, I am emphasizing the structure of the story as I read. Questions we can ask students before, during, and after reading are things like, what do they notice? What's happening? Who is this about? Where does the story take place? Have you figured that out yet? What seems to be the problem in this story? And as you get to the end, how is this problem solved? After reading, we discuss the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. We're kind of giving an oral summary before we get busy. Then we write the summary together. You can do this for a couple of days, a full week, however long you feel like you need for your students to be able to grasp this concept. Once they're kind of in that groove and they get it, I give students wordless books to read in their groups. And then they can write the summary together in pairs or as their whole group, depending on how well your class works together in different formats. Then you can rotate those wordless books another day, and everyone will get a turn with a different wordless book. And you can do that for several days as well. Obviously, as they're working, you're going around and you're checking and talking to each group and helping them self-correct as they move through with writing their summaries. And this is true even with young students or ELLs who may be writing their summaries in a combination of pictures and words. According to the Journal of Scholarship of Teaching and Learning in 2010, effective writing is a skill that is grounded in the cognitive domain. It involves learning, comprehension, application, and synthesis of new knowledge. That's exactly what summaries do. They help us take this information, figure it out, remember it, put it into a new format, which is synthesis. So we are taking this and synthesizing it. It's such an important skill. You don't always have to write a summary. You can do oral summaries. You can do picture summaries. There's lots of ways to do summaries without writing. With kindergarten and first grade especially, picture summaries work really well, especially in the beginning of the year, and then you can work on adding words to those as the year progresses. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. Start your teaching of writing summaries with wordless books. Then move to picture books that have words. And then you can move to chapter books. And remember, you can do all of this as read-alouds. It really evens the playing field for all students. So if you have students in all different reading levels, you can all learn summarizing together with a read-aloud. Especially with a chapter book, it's such a great way for students to learn how to summarize each chapter as they go along, because this is a skill they will use over and over again in all kinds of content areas throughout their life. And remember, summaries don't have to be just written. They can be oral summaries. You can do picture summaries. So there's lots of ways to fit summarizing in throughout the whole year when maybe that's not your central focus right now, but you can still continue to practice it. So there's quick ways to summarize throughout the year that won't require students to sit down and write a full summary. This is a great way to keep that learning fresh and keep it going so they don't forget this important strategy. So give it a go. I can't wait to hear how this works out for you. I have a free guide to get you started, so you can grab that in the show notes. And don't forget, you can grab all kinds of other teacher freebies in the vault. As always, that link is in the show notes as well. So that's it for this episode of the Teach Joyfully podcast, my teacher friends. My sincere thanks to you, my listeners, for tuning in, and for all those of you who've taken the time to post a review, email me your thoughts, or DM me on Instagram with your feedback or topic requests. You can find the show notes and all the resources mentioned in the episode on my website at www.hopeineducation.com/podcast. And remember, A happy teacher is a good teacher. Until next time, teach joyfully and take care of you.